I'd like to welcome you to day 2 of B-Sides Las Vegas. How's everyone doing? All right, some coffee. Well, welcome to the first talk of day 2 in the Proving Grounds track. This talk is harnessing AI and post-quantum cryptography for cybersecurity in the quantum era. It'll be presented by Anushka. Before we start, a few quick announcements. We'd like to thank our sponsors, especially our diamond sponsors, Adobe and Aikido, and our gold sponsors, Formal and Drop Zone AI. It's their support, along with other sponsors, donors, and volunteers that make this event possible. Also, this talk is being recorded, so as a reminder to those in the audience, please put your phone on silent so as not to disturb the presentation. If there is time at the end for questions, wave me down. I'll be running around with a microphone just so that folks on the recording can hear. And with that, I will hand it over to Anushka.
Perfect, thank you. Can everyone hear me? Also in the back? Cool, okay. So yeah, today we're gonna be talking about harnessing AI and post-quantum crypto for cybersecurity in the quantum era. So before we get started, a little bit of a who am I? I'm a product manager at Microsoft. I've been there for about a year now. I focus on encryption for Kerberos as well as Azure Kubernetes service. And overall, I'm passionate about security as well as cryptography and like engaging with the security community, and that's kind of what brings me here today. All right, let's start with a little bit of a case study. This starts with a broad statement here. Your data has been compromised. So let's say if you have an advanced persistent threat like APT45, who's been backed by the North Korean government. So who's kind of heard of them already, just a show of hands? Okay, a lot of you. And who can kind of tell me which industries they usually target? There's a little bit of a giveaway on the slide. So they target defense, aerospace, nuclear, and engineering organizations across US and other countries. So they're usually focused on creating disruptive cyber attacks, but now they've evolved to creating specialized cyber espionage attacks. So we know that they're doing lots of bad things, but what if I told you they could just steal your secrets simply by exfiltrating your web traffic? So data leaks are happening every day, and the most dangerous part is that they're happening silently. So we don't know which data is being stolen until it's much later and too late. And on Q day, all of this data can be decrypted much faster. So what is Q day? Q day is a theoretical point in time when we anticipate that quantum computers will become strong enough to break traditional encryption. So this is anticipated to be in the year 2030. It could be sooner than that, it could be later than that, but this is just based on the research that we know. And at that point, any data that has been stolen can be decrypted in just a matter of weeks. Now, before I get started, I do want to start with absolute basics. I'm sure all of you guys know all this already, but just so that we're on the same page, our modern cryptographic systems are based on difficult mathematical problems. That includes things like factoring large prime numbers and solving discrete logarithms. So I'll start with super basics. There is symmetric crypto and asymmetric crypto. Show of hands if you guys know all about this. Everybody, cool, okay. So you guys are all experts. I'm just gonna go through it really quickly. So symmetric crypto uses the same keys for encryption and decryption, and a common example is AES. Asymmetric crypto uses, or public key cryptography uses public key for encryption, private key for decryption, and 99% of the time, this is how you're sharing your symmetric keys, right? And good common examples of that are RSA and ECC. Now that we've kind of established the basics, let's get right into it. So with quantum computing, quantum computers are able to solve problems about 100 million times faster than classical computers. And the reason they're able to do this is because they represent a paradigm shift. So with classical computing, you have your binary bits, right? So your zeros and ones. But with classical computing, you have qubits that leverage quantum mechanical properties, such as superposition and entanglement. So with superposition, that's the ability of a qubit to be in multiple states at the same time. So simple example can be a coin. With binary bits, you have like your heads or tails or zeros or ones. But with qubits, it's kind of like flipping that coin, and it can be heads or tails simultaneously or zeros or ones simultaneously. The other quantum mechanical property that's relevant is entanglement. So this is the ability for qubits to be, multiple qubits to be correlated even over long distances. And these two properties allow quantum computers to explore multiple possibilities for complex mathematical problems at the same time, and solve those problems much quickly, something that classical computers just cannot do right now. So let's kind of look at what the graph here looks like. So when we think about quantum computing, as you can see, when the problem size increases, the time taken for classical computing increases in an exponential manner, whereas time taken for quantum computing increases in a linear manner. And yes, there is a little bit of an overhead, but overall, the trend is linear. As the number of problems increases, the distance between the two, the gap between the two, also increases quite a bit. So what does that mean? That means that problems that we thought were unsolvable or would take billions of years with classical computing are going to take a matter of weeks with quantum computing. So this is why it's really serious with the kind of speed up that quantum computing is giving us. Now let's kind of talk about what are the algorithms that allow quantum computing to get this sort of linear speed up. Just a show of hands if you guys have heard of Shor's algorithm and Grover's algorithm already. Okay, so some of you. So Shor's algorithm represents a breakthrough which allows us to factor large prime numbers as well as discrete logarithms exponentially faster. And why does this matter, right? This matters because algorithms like RSA and ECC are based on those same principles, kind of going back to the first slide that I presented. And if you have a quantum computer running Shor's algorithm, it's going to factor these numbers exponentially faster. And this matters because RSA and ECC are the algorithms used in all of our secure web connections today. So this is a big deal. Now with Grover's algorithm, it offers a quadratic speedup for our unstructured search problems. So when I think about unstructured search problems, what does that remind you of? You have a problem and you're going at it with every possible solution. What does that kind of sound like? Brute force, I heard brute force, okay, great. So yeah, it speeds up brute force attacks, right? So Grover's algorithm is not going to explicitly go and break encryption, things like symmetric encryption, but it's going to speed up those brute force attacks. Let's walk through an example. If you have something like AES 128, that's going to take about 2 to the 128 attempts to break with classical computing. But with quantum computing, it takes about 2 to the 64 amount of calculations. So it's effectively halving the security. Having said that, if you do use things that have larger bit sizes, such as AES 256, then that's still considered post-quantum safe. Now that I've said all this, you might be wondering, is classical encryption broken today? And the answer is no. Quantum computers are still in their early stages and they don't have enough stable qubits. So the brute forcing example that I talked about, that would require thousands of stable qubits, and we don't have that yet. There's also noise and decoherence, so for that error correction to happen, you would still require stable qubits, which we don't have. But the threat is real and it's growing. So you might be wondering, what are adversaries doing today? Adversaries are engaged in something called harvest now, decrypt later attacks. So what that means is you're stealing encrypted data with the hope that you will be able to decrypt it in the future once quantum computers become powerful enough. Now, you guys all know storing data is not free. You know, you pay lots of dollars on your iCloud storage just to store images. So storing data like this is obviously expensive. So adversaries are not just kind of stealing all data out there. They're being really strategic about this. They're stealing data that has longevity. So they're looking at intellectual property, government secrets, healthcare data, data that's going to be relevant about 5 to 10 years from now. So with that, and given the long lead times to make changes to the cryptographic algorithms, it's absolutely essential that we kind of act today. And the first step of kind of acting today is being able to detect some of the harvest now, decrypt later attacks. So harvest now, decrypt later attacks can broadly be classified into things like data exfiltration attacks, as well as network intrusion attacks. So this threat landscape has both outsider threats and insider threats. Each has its own unique risks to the organization, but I'll be talking about outsider threats today. So there's traditional defense mechanisms that I've put on the slide, things like network monitoring, IDS, IPS, DLP, as well as next generation firewalls. So these are all really good, and they're effective against known threats. And they can have behavioral baselines, and they can go and detect anomalies. However, where they fall short is against zero-day attacks or stealthy adversaries. And this is where AI can really enhance the detection capabilities. And there's 3 ways it can do so. The first is behavior analytics. So it can look at user and device behavior and look at subtle deviations within that and flag compromised accounts or lateral movements. The second is by having dynamic policy adjustments or auto-tuning your firewall rules based on the real-time threat detection that it's doing. The third is having predictive threat modeling. So it has access to historical data within your own system as well as global data by web scraping. What are those zero-day attacks that are happening in the wild? Based on that, it can anticipate what type of attacks can be coming up in your own environment. So this AI capability combined with your traditional detection mechanisms can give you a more granular and proactive approach to detecting and mitigating against data exfiltration as well as post-quantum crypto attacks that are coming up. Now that I've talked about AI quite a bit, I want to walk you through a little bit of a research that I have been doing. So I used a KDD network intrusion dataset. So this included about 18 different features, and it had information about things like port scanning, network exfiltration, if there is a use of admin or super user, or if there is remote access from a different laptop. All of these attacks combined, I had 3 different AI/ML models. So I had isolation forests, autoencoders, and variational autoencoders. And among them, autoencoders performed the best for accuracy, precision, and recall. So I'll take a moment here to just go through those results. Here, having a high precision and high recall, in my opinion, is really essential. Having high precision will make sure that you don't have too many false alarms. Our cybersecurity resources are precious, so you want to make sure that you're putting it to good use. And high recall will ensure that you're not actually missing any sort of attacks that might be happening. So those are really important and something that you must consider. Let me kind of go through a little bit about each of these models. So isolation forests kind of work by randomly splitting out features and then isolating anomalies. So this was really good for detecting simple outliers. For example, when there was an increase in outbound traffic, that's an obvious indication of data exfiltration, right? And the next model that I had was autoencoders. So this is more neural networks where it was used to look at the normal data flow and then reconstruct it. And when there was a high reconstruction error, then that basically was an indication of an anomaly. So to make sure that I set the biases right, I had to do benchmarking and normalizing the data. But this was good for detecting things like subtle deviations in user behavior. So there was data from a bank that I also used, and that could say, okay, this is not indicative of a specific user's behavior. So that was good for things like that. Next was variational autoencoders. So this goes a step further, and it models whatever autoencoders does with a probabilistic latent space. So this is good at detecting subtle deviations and long-term deviations. So if you have an advanced persistent threat in your environment, for example, then this will be beneficial to help you out with, in addition to your traditional detection capabilities. Now, the data set that I used isn't very complex. It was 18 features, so overall, the models performed really well. But one key takeaway that I want to leave you with this experiment is that AI can greatly help you with passive exfiltration detection. So this is when data is leaked slowly and quietly, and this is going to go unnoticed by your traditional detection mechanisms. However, if you have an AI model that's trained on high recall, like I mentioned earlier, recall is really important. High recall anomaly detection, then that's going to be a more accurate indicator of subtle activities happening like silent data harvesting. All right, now that I've talked about AI so much, I want to bring this a little bit close to home. There's 4 different industries on this slide here: finance, healthcare, government, and technology and cloud. Just a show of hands if you guys work in this industry or have customers in these industries. Okay, that's a lot of us, right? So this is going to impact all of us. And quantum computing poses a significant threat for all of these industries. In finance, it's going to invalidate digital signatures and enable fraud. So this is potentially going to increase global losses by about 20 to 30%. In healthcare, patient data could be exposed, so that's going to be in violation of HIPAA and GDPR. And those attacks are anticipated to go up by about 50%. And for governments, your secrets and kind of classified communication could be retroactively exposed. So that's pretty dangerous as well. And for technology and cloud, protocols like TLS and SSH, as well as VPNs, they could be compromised. And this could basically threaten our platform integrity and customer data. So this isn't just a theoretical risk. It's real, it's growing, and transitioning to post-quantum crypto isn't optional. It's absolutely essential for operational resilience. So with that, you're probably wondering how to prevent against post-quantum crypto. So there's a couple different steps. The first step is being able to define the scope of existing crypto inventory. So you want to understand which systems and data types are in scope. And then you want to understand the cryptographic assets in use. So do you have algorithms like RSA, ECC, SHA, things like that? What are the key sizes used? How often are the keys rotated? And this is, again, a use case for machine learning, where it can go through your databases and network traffic to tell you if you are using any sort of vulnerable algorithms. Next, you want to document and assess your crypto usage. So you want to understand where each of these algorithms are used. Are they in TLS? Are they in VPNs? Are they in Kerberos? You also want to understand the lifetime of the data that's being protected. It's important to have short data retention, as well as segregation of the data segmentation. Third, you want to understand the risk of exposure. If you have data that's going to be long-lived, for example, government secrets or healthcare data, then that explicitly needs to be protected, and you need to make sure that there's good protection mechanisms around it. Next step is really important, which is enabling crypto agility. So what is crypto agility? Have you guys heard of that term before? Just a show of hands. Okay, a few of us. So crypto agility is the principle of designing our systems such that you're easily able to swap cryptographic algorithms. So how do you do that? You want to be using modular crypto libraries, and you want to make it so that your future updates can be done without fully re-engineering your stack. And this is critical for post-quantum crypto because these algorithms are still evolving. Which brings me to my next step. You want to integrate post-quantum algorithms. So there's 3 that have been standardized by NIST already. The first one is MLDSA, which is used for key exchange. The second one is, MLChem, which is used for key exchange. And then the second one is MLDSA, which is used for certificate hardening. Third one is SLHDSA, which is used for hash-based signature hardening. So all 3 of these are post-quantum crypto algorithms that you might want to consider. In addition to that, you also want to be aware of integrating hybrid crypto. So what does that mean? It means combining your traditional encryption with your quantum encryption. So it's a matter of ordering. So quantum encryption can be applied first, and then classical encryption, or other way around. The reason to do this is to be able to give you interoperability during the transition period. And lastly, you just want to be aware of any sort of government guidance that's out there. There's already documents that have been published by CNSA and NIST, so make sure you're in compliance with those. All right, I want to make one quick point to emphasize here. Post-quantum crypto changes are not a one-time event. You're going to have to keep making these changes. And the reason for this is because these algorithms are less studied and less attacked, which means there will 100% be changes in the future. So things that we think are safe right now may not be safe later. That's because we just don't know the potential of what quantum computers can break. So what do you need to do now? You need to adopt crypto agility so that you're able to make these updates without breaking any sort of legacy systems and requiring full stack rewrites. All right, now that I've talked about post-quantum algorithms so much, I'm sure you want to know a little bit more about them. So I'll do a bit of an overview. So MLChem, you can kind of think about this as a high security digital lockbox in the quantum era. So if you want to send a secret, instead of kind of handing over the key to the recipient, you're creating a lockbox that only the intended recipient can open. Even if someone tries to kind of intercept the data, they won't be able to. From a technical standpoint, this is based on the difficulty of solving module lattice with errors. And in this case, you kind of want to think about it as, okay, so if you want to send this to a recipient, you want to encapsulate the data using their public key. So that's kind of like locking the lockbox. And then you want to, and the receiver can decapsulate the secret or unlock the lockbox using their private key. So this is fast, it's efficient, and it's considered safe even in the quantum era. The next algorithm that I'm going to be talking about is MLDSA. So this is used for signature hardening. You can think about this as a quantum era wax seal, which is intended to provide authenticity even in an era where our traditional wax seals like RSA and ECC are not able to. From a technical standpoint, they're also based on the hardness of module learning with errors. And so if you want to use MLDSA, you're pretty much going to create a mathematical proof that is tied to the private key as well as the message content. And anybody with your public key can then go and verify the secret and make sure that the message hasn't been tampered with and it's actually coming from the claim sender. So you can kind of think about this as a stamp in the quantum era that can't be forged. All right, so I'm coming back to the first kind of use case or scenario that I walked through. With this, you can kind of see like everything's kind of the same, but the last box has changed. By using the kind of steps that I described in my presentation, as well as PQC and crypto agility, your data will be safe in the post-quantum era. Now, before I end the presentation, I want to leave you with some key takeaways. As we saw in the presentation, this post-quantum threat is real and it impacts a lot of different industries. So early planning is absolutely essential to make sure that we are planning for post-quantum crypto and transitioning to quantum-safe algorithms. Today will make sure that you are post-quantum compliant and quantum safe in the future. Thank you.
Hello. Let's assume that, of course, the harvest now decrypt later has been going on for a bit, but it's still happening. Is there any movement within large organizations, finance, defense, so on and so forth, to go back and retroactively re-encrypt a lot of these sensitive databases using post-quantum encryption?
So it's dependent on the organization themselves. The way I'll kind of speak about what I kind of know based on the work that we're doing, I guess, at the company that I work at, or just the general research. Of course, this is not representative of Microsoft's opinion, just my own. So what we're trying to do is make sure that the future systems are quantum safe. So for data that already exists and might have vulnerable algorithms, it's recommended that you take those updates. Let's say if you have a Windows server, make sure you update to the latest version that is post-quantum crypto compliant and store your essential data there. And that's part of the steps where you're kind of taking an inventory of what data is vulnerable and making sure it's safe. So those would be the steps.
Thank you.
Hi, I was wondering, as you mentioned NIST and FIPS, do you see a new FIPS 140 dash version coming up with the post-quantum being certified now after having been, well, in evaluation for a year and all that? I mean, what I can see from a project that I'm working on is that there's still in like standard libraries so much cryptography that is not FIPS certifiable still today, and not even speaking about like adding post-quantum to those. Do you see that there's any movement like in OpenSSL or LibNSS or the such, or Kerberos?
Yeah, so algorithms like Kerberos, TLS, they're already moving towards implementing post-quantum crypto, like implementing those and integrating post-quantum crypto algorithms based on the timelines that have been laid out by CNSA. Actually, let me see if I can. Okay, yeah, based on the timelines that have been laid out by CNSA, there's differences for every single kind of category here. I'll talk about operating systems since the protocols that you asked about are specifically relevant there. What is required is we must offer, there must be an option to be post-quantum compliant. And then by 2030 or 2033 is the deadline where you must absolutely only use post-quantum crypto algorithms. And that's based on just CNSA. And how each organization implements it is, I guess, dependent on them, but that's the general guidance from CNSA, and similar should follow from FIPS.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation. I was curious about your opinion of the risks to blockchain from quantum, and any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so for blockchain, wallets should absolutely be upgraded to be using those PQC algorithms. When we have node-to-node communication, if that's using TLS is going to be updated very soon to be using PQC algorithms. So similarly, that communication between those nodes will also be using PQC. So blockchain will also have implications from PQC, essentially, is my overall opinion. So so good in general, but if you, I know there are old blockchain kind of data that's available out there. So you need to go and make sure that that's encrypted with more latest PQC algorithms, because people could go use Shor's algorithm and try to derive a private key based on the public key that is already there. So that's just a threat. The threat does exist to blockchain is essentially what I'm saying.
All right, let's give Anushka one more round of applause.